Time for the hot topic of the hour. New Fox News polls show that the economy is still overwhelmingly the most important issue for voters. With 20 days before Election Day, 40% say that it's their biggest factor this election. 7 in 10 Americans view the economy negatively right now under the Biden-Harris administration. Voters still trust Trump more on the economy. Here are the numbers. 53% to Harris's 45%. Harris explained in her first ever Fox News interview last night why she thinks voters should trust her instead. Watch.
Why do you think more people say they trust him on the economy than they trust you?
When you look at an analysis of our plans for what we would do as President of the United States, it has been clear to those who study and understand how economic policy works that moving forward, because I do believe the American people are ready to turn the page on the divisiveness and the type of rhetoric that has come out of Donald Trump. People are ready to chart a new way forward, and they want a president who has a plan for the future and a plan that is sound and will strengthen our country. My plan for the economy does exactly that. His plan would be, again, to give tax cuts to billionaires and the biggest corporations in our country and blow up our deficit.
She talks about her plan, but what is her plan? Okay, every time she's asked about the number one issue that's upsetting American citizens, and that is inflation, the cost of everything, she says it's price gouging, and she blames corporate America. So what is the plan to rein in inflation? I don't know. Have I missed it?
Go to KamalaHarris.com.
There's 80 pages of policy, and you can find it for yourself.
You know,
it is unbelievable to me that she continues the narrative the economy's never been stronger. I mean, that narrative, what are you saying to the American people? That their pain is not real? That their reality, that they can't make ends meet in the same way they used to? Many people, there was another analysis in the New York Times of undecided voters who talk about, look, I'm a two-income family. We have a great income, but now we're talking about not taking vacations that we used to be able to take because the prices are so bad, and she cannot address it. It is staggering.
I think part of the reason she can't address it is that she caused it. Okay, she led $7 trillion in spending. She was the tie-breaking vote on 2 of those packages, and she doesn't want to get into the fact that inflation is too many dollars chasing too few goods, and it was $7 trillion in spending on her watch.
How do you think American voters feel right now when they say, I'm in pain, I can't do this? And her answer is, listen to the biggest financial institutions. They'll tell you the economy's never been stronger.
Yeah, try studying.
It's like
those people who study.
Kitchen table
no, my plan is better. What, so the rest of us don't study?
Kitchen table issues are not the same as the macroeconomic issues. And she's talking about 2 different things. Look at this. 70% of Americans say the economy is bad. That is their reality. Right. You must address it.
So, Maria, the thing you've been pointing out all morning, that on all the issues that they have, and the economy being first and all the other issues, what's really also important is what is not on that list. So what you don't see is climate change. You don't have, nobody's talking about that as a major. I mean, and you also don't have anything that talks about democracy. All the things that the Democratic platforms have been talking about, that's not the issues that people are really concerned about. None of them. So it's not only the fact that they're not winning on the issues that people care about, nobody cares about the issues that they've been talking about.
Yeah, and not only that, but they're spending around those ideas. People don't care about climate change, and yet there's trillions and trillions of dollars spent for the climate change agenda. And look at all the regulations that have come with it. Businesses are getting strangled by regulations, trying to keep up with these new standards of knowing what your customers have in terms of emissions.
And that's why small businesses, when you look at small business optimism, it has been below the 50-year average now for 33 consecutive months, thanks to the Biden-Harris administration. But when we talk about the economy, and Kamala, she keeps saying turn the page. What Americans want is they want to turn the page back to Trump's presidency, where real wages peaked. Real wage growth during the time Trump was in office was up 10%. During the Biden-Harris administration, it's down like 1.5% since they took office. Consumer confidence was over 30% higher when Trump was in office. So you look at all these things as far as the economy goes, and obviously Trump is going to be the better solution as it relates to keeping inflation low and spurring economic growth.
That's a point so many people miss when we have these discussions about this. They try to ramp up. This is going to be a horrible thing if he gets in. Wait a minute. He's been in.
Yeah.
We've seen what he's done.
Right.
So why don't we go back and say, what were the good parts? What were the bad parts? Let's try to fix that. But stop with the hysteria that if this guy
that's
gains
why I think
control.
the hysteria doesn't work, because the hysteria was there in 2016. I can remember being on different programs in 2016, and people said the economy is going to crash, the stock market's going to crash, we're never going to recover. And yet,
we were saying the complete opposite.
I know, we were, but I'm saying there were people out there saying that then.
The hysteria is coming from a small group of Democrats who are the loudest in the room. Nearly 80% of Americans, voters, say our nation is on the wrong track. This is the latest from the Marquette Law School poll. When it comes to Harris's talking points of turning the page, she struggled to elaborate what she's talking about. Listen to this.
More than
People are
70% of people
exhausted.
tell the country is on the wrong track. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam
You
Vice
and I
President.
both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that over the last decade,
But
people
you're the
have
lever of
become...
power. So you're not Joe Biden, you're not Donald Trump, but nothing comes to mind that you would do differently?
My presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency. I will bring my life experiences, my professional experiences, and fresh and new ideas. I represent a new generation of leadership. I, for example, am someone who has not spent the majority of my career in Washington, D.C.
Again, what does that mean? What is her plan? Harris also dodged a question on President Biden's cognitive decline and how long she's known about it. Watch.
When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room, and he has the judgment and the experience to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions on behalf of the American people.
There were no concerns raised?
Brett, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
What do you make of that one, Michael?
So first off, you're there, and now you say, let's turn the page. So you're saying that everything that the Biden administration was doing, you're going to disavow. But you were part of the Biden administration. Secondly, so you're defending Joe Biden's mental capacity in the Situation Room. Okay. Then why was he dumped unceremoniously from the ticket? The underlying thing here is that Kamala Harris has never had any votes in the primary, and she is the nominee.
Well, she was selected, not elected.
Right, and so the question really becomes, when you turn the page, why? What was so bad in the Biden administration? Articulate that, and to your point, what's your plan to change it? Because we've never heard those specifics as how she's going to change it. What were the programs that were wrong, and how she's going to make it better?
Her new favorite phrase is, I will follow the law.
Yeah, right.
Yet she did not do what she was obligated to do under the 25th Amendment. She wants to circumvent the law as it relates to handing out $20,000 forgivable loans to certain people of a certain skin color. All of those sound illegal to me.
Yeah, so does Joe Biden.
Yeah.
He keeps breaking the law with this student loan forgiveness, which the Supreme Court said was unconstitutional.
Yep.
We're going to take a quick break. We're just getting started this hour. We've got a lot coming up.